My name is Savannah Scott. I am an office worker who turns 30 this year. I work at a local company. I haven't moved away from my parents yet. My mother died when I was young, and my father and grandparents raised me. My grandparents used to run a supermarket on the first floor of our house. After my mother died, my father, a chef, took over and quickly transformed it into a bakery. Even as a little girl, I knew why he started his business. He wanted to see me off to school and then welcome me home. The bread he made was basic yet excellent. His bakery immediately became a staple of the town. Whenever the regulars saw me in the shop, they always wanted to know how school was doing for me. Of course, I missed my mother a lot. I would sometimes cry myself to sleep. My father and grandmother showered me with affection, as if to make up for my misery. Many others looked after me. I never experienced misfortune. Then it was time for me to get married. My fiancé, Henry Morgan, worked at the same office. He was a sportsman who played for a company club team. He was often hungry, so I occasionally brought him my father's bread. Isn't it wonderful to get to eat bread like this every day? He was so impressed that he made it his duty to express his sentiments to the artist. He returned to the house and quickly struck up a conversation with my father. My father used to say, if I were a baker, I'd have a large dog. He admired Henry, who was his faithful giant. On weekends, he would take him fishing or to his favorite bar, praising him as his proud son. Hey, I'd like to spend some time alone with Henry too. Nope. I decided to take him to a nice barbecue today. Stop it. Please do not fight over me. The three of us laughed around like true family members. Hence, I was overjoyed when Henry proposed to me. There was only one difficulty, however. The wedding was 6 months away. I was meant to go to Henry's flat following the ceremony. He was frequently occupied with weekend practice and tournaments with his club squad. So I cleaned his house to make way for my belongings and made lunch for him while I waited. Pre-newly moist existence. As if to dampen my lovely mood, another individual entered his apartment. Mrs. Morgan is Henry's mother. It stinks like bread here. Do you shower every day? She smirked as she entered with a duplicate key without knocking on the door. I apologize. Our bathroom is full of the smell of freshly baked bread. Huh, you red rigs of lowlife. Why did you advise your father on the components and how to adapt to the latest trends? Does he import French butter? Use organic fruits? He buys the butter from a local provider. The fruits came from the neighborhood grocer. It's not a good idea to be indifferent about such things. Don't come sobbing to me if his business collapses. Yes, ma'am. I'd listen to her uneducated but proud mother's sermon. I used to dispute with her all the time. I stopped because it was so ludicrous. Even if I agreed with her, she grew irritated and sarcastic. I'm curious why Henry chose such a dull chick. I went through the difficulty of raising him to be a handsome, bright, and athletic man. I agree. It is a mystery. Don't you agree with me? But you should try to improve yourself. I still do not accept you as my daughter-in-law. I received it. I wondered how Henry was able to be who he was despite having such a horrible mother. The face resembles a filled roll. I'm wondering if you keep a loaf of bread in your stomach. Your arms resemble Josiah's bread. Henry's mother sneered whenever I saw her. I felt it was demeaning to both myself and bread. When she begged to eat some of my father's bread, I brought it to her, but she only took a nibble and left. Then she showed off 8 Danish, which she had purchased from a prominent hotel. Henry's father was similar. He worked for a corporation with multiple sales offices across the county. My town was picked as a new frontier a few years ago, and he was sent as director of the sales office. He had been working hard and meeting with key people in the area in order to advance his career. I honestly felt it was incredible that he would gain influence in the community. However, he looked down on us, a tiny business owner, in the same manner that his wife did. Not that I couldn't stand their contempt, but the stress progressively increased. Henry became fed up with his parents and moved out, despite the fact that they resided close to his workplace. Although he did everything he could to protect me from them, there was nothing I could do if he wasn't present. Frankly, I wouldn't want to meet such daring people if it weren't for his parents. One day, Henry's father invited us over. Here's the wedding guest list. Henry's father thrust the paper at us as soon as we arrived. There were around 50 names on the list. Who are they? Except for my relatives, I do not know any of those people. Isn't that amazing? My business partners would like to attend the reception. While Henry raised his brow, his father appeared triumphant. Why should we invite so many of your people? We're only renting a 120-person venue. So it is impossible. Why don't you simply trim back on the bride's side? What? It is appropriate for us, an upper-class family, to invite additional visitors. The wedding of the eldest son also serves as an opportunity to demonstrate the family's dominance. I have never heard of such a thing. He glared at his father. His mother intervened. He's correct. It is the custom of an elite society. If you are the eldest son in our family, there are many individuals we must please, except Savannah, who is from a lesser socioeconomic level. To not talk like that. I glared at them coldly as Henry shivered with wrath next to me. I did not want to be as low as them. I looked through the guest list and labeled Henry's sleeve. It's okay, Henry. I agree with you, Mr. and Mrs. Morgan. Let us keep 70 seats for you, 10 for our co-workers, 40 on my side. Is this good enough? Savannah. I am impressed by how agreeable you are. Don't forget your status for the day. Yes, sir, I responded innocently. Henry appeared to want to say something, but I dragged him out of the house. I apologize, Savannah. I pledged to hold a wedding with a few close friends and relatives. He hung his head low on the way back. Don't worry, your awful folks will be there regardless. Besides, glancing at the guest list, it doesn't appear too horrible. Several familiar names appeared among the guests. I'll demonstrate the actual power of Baker's daughter. I refuse to keep my head down in the face of such rudeness. I'm going to flip the tables around. I didn't want my father, who was truly happy about our marriage, to be worried. So I took their insults silently. I was mistaken. Their pride and misery were incomprehensible. If I had not fought back, I would have been their slave for the rest of my life. My ferocity shocked King. He then remarked, "That's my woman," with a giggle. Can I offer a suggestion? What is it? We can register following the reception. What? The unexpectedness puzzled me. However, his eyes were serious. Okay, I had no idea what he was planning, but I chose to trust my soon-to-be husband. Then came the Scott and Morgan family's wedding day. Walking down the aisle and scattering rice, the ceremony went off without a hitch and the reception was ready to begin. After correcting my hair and makeup, I entered the hall with the groom. Savannah. Beautiful. Savannah. Hello, the Prius Baker. Cheers and yells erupted across the room, not just from the bride's side, but also from the groom's side. I could see Mr. Morgan's astonished face and Mrs. Morgan's nasty expression, and I grinned. Henry's father's proud ties included landowners and other powerful figures with deep roots in the community. Unfortunately, they were all clients of the bakery. I've known them as aunts and uncles since elementary school. A.B., you've matured into a stunning woman. Thank you, Mrs. Bennet. I assumed the girl who used to kick my son's buttocks is married. Oh, Mr. Gray, you used to collect frogs and stuff them into a box. You seem very graceful now. Thanks, Mrs. Tate. You attempted to eat the mushrooms growing in the park, but I will get you now. The clothing was unique. Please, Mr. Hughes. They all spoke fondly, but couldn't they locate a better episode? Henry listened calmly, but when I received Mr.'s invitation, my face turned bright crimson. Morgan, I was planning to decline, but then I saw your name as a bride, and I accepted. I couldn't help but giggle as they all said the same thing. They were like my guests after all. While Mr. and Mrs. Morgan went around greeting each guest, they appeared to have learned about my childhood. Both of them were smiling, but their insides were probably twisting. They were shown the breadth of my family connection on stage, where they wanted to demonstrate their strength. My colleagues and supervisors admired my father, who always treated them with respect. They surrounded my father and appeared to be having a great time. Although many ideas raced around behind the scenes, the reception remained cheerful throughout the lunch, toast, and guest remarks. But then a major incident occurred. When Henry's father was speaking, his mother grabbed his microphone. She spoke clearly, unconcerned with the audience's chatter. Henry was brilliant from a young age. He's consistently won first place in everything. He is our cherished son. That is overrated, but it demonstrated how deeply she loved him. But I regret not teaching him how to find the appropriate woman for himself. Savannah, as you all know, is restless and irresponsible, and she does not heed what others say. It's her wedding, but she's flaunting her flabby arms. After everyone else reminisced about the past, she attempted to shame me in front of 120 people. Even Mr. Morgan became blue with dread, but she's the lady Henry has chosen. As her new mother, I plan to teach her how to be a decent wife. Have you understood, Savannah? She suddenly requested my consent. The anger in her eyes prompted me to respond, but I couldn't simply nod at this point. I only have one mommy in the world. I reject such a terrible mother. I did not want to dispute or demean myself in front of the guests. Henry, although a wonderful man, prefers rough and overweight women. Thanks for that. I'm lucky, right? I humorously turned to Henry, who tried to smile despite his fury. Savannah is the most stunning woman in the world. It's a shame that my mother cannot see that. Henry, this woman is deceiving you. Mrs. Morgan, please perceive the mood. A low, raspy voice could be heard close to me at the time. Is that everything you have to say? My father glared at Mrs. Morgan with an expression I'd never seen before. Because she lost her mother at a young age, she may lack feminine qualities. Despite this, she grew up to be a compassionate, kind kid who considers people around her. I will not forgive you for insulting her. What can a simple baker do? His bread feeds both the stomach and the heart, unlike you, Mom, who can only look down upon others. What? She froze at Kane's frightening expression. He grabbed the microphone from her grasp, took a deep breath, and smiled at the guest. Thank you for joining us in celebrating this new chapter of our lives. We are truly sorry you had to see such a horrible sight. I am delighted to have Savannah as my wife, who is brilliant, lively, and well-liked by others. I understand your concern since her in-laws are such horrible people. Yeah. Shouts arose from the groom's side of the table. Mr. and Mrs. Morgan gazed around, her eyes wide open. Please be assured that I am cutting relations with them at the time, and I'll accept the surname of Scott. What? Henry. The entire audience would support this. My mouth was agape after hearing it for the first time. I assumed this was why he wanted to register after his wedding. I'm not going to let that happen. No way. I do not need your approval. What? He silenced them harshly. He turned to my father and asked, Mr. Scott, I'm not perfect, but will you accept me as your son? Everything fell silent. All eyes were on my father, who remained unmoved. It was as if he understood how Henry felt. Henry, I've long considered you part of my family. It is my delight to look after my daughter, who is a tomboy. They embraced each other. Congratulations. A loud cry arose from the groom's side that elicited great applause and shouts of congratulations. It brought tears to my eyes. I was the world's happiest person. I worried if my mother was observing me from somewhere at that time. Mr. and Mrs. Morgan's prayers were enveloped in a whirlwind of benefits. The next day, we officially registered our marriage. True to his word, Henry adopted my surname. I was concerned that he would regret allowing the momentum to get the best of him, but he glanced at his new driver's license with relief. Henry had spoken with my father about changing his surname to Scott. He also told him about his parents' habits, but he still claimed to marry me in tears. My father was impressed by his seriousness and grew fonder of him. The closeness between the two was stronger than I could have anticipated, and it made me both delighted and jealous. Henry was unquestionably the best companion I could have asked for. On the other hand, Henry's parents' outrage at having their son taken away was terrible. They threatened to cut all relations forever if he changed his surname. However, when Henry accepted it without hesitation, they were in fear. Furthermore, they incited several of the guests against themselves by criticizing me. I could trust you, so I'll cancel our contract. I wouldn't suggest your business to anyone. In addition to straight rejections, the company's director is a lunatic. That story immediately spread, and his company's revenues fell dramatically. In this community, where people value loyalty, humanity, and personal relationships, they may be a source of strength, but they could also be a pit of stupidity. It was dumb of them to try to manipulate others to demonstrate their power without recognizing it. They were so disturbed and puzzled that they pleaded and threatened us simultaneously. Henry had no intention of forgiving them, which relieved me. In the end, Mr. Morgan received a phone call from the top office and was blamed and demoted for his mistakes. His younger subordinates looked down on him, and he worked dishonorably. Mrs. Morgan was devastated by the loss of her beautiful son to the woman she detested, as well as Mr. Morgan's relegation. Furthermore, her family, whom she had invited to the wedding, skirted around her. Henry's pals notified their mother about the incident, and she, too, lost her seat in the circle. Henry has a younger sister. She was also fed up with her parents, so she stopped returning home from her relationships. Everything they were proud of was gone, leaving only misery. Henry and I both smiled at their self-inflicted disaster. 5 years have gone by. Dad, the red rolls are finished. Then help me with this next one. Okay. 2 men are busily working in the small kitchen. Henry began baking with my dad on weekends. He wants to be a baker right now, but because he is doing well at his job, he will stay at the office for a little longer. When I became pregnant, I quit my job. I'm selling my father's bread online while caring for our 2 children. Henry did not want the tasty bread to go to waste, so he created the website. My dad's simple bread is easy to sell frozen, and sales have been fairly strong. Our children now like the bread that my father and Henry have cooked. These tranquil days are the most valuable asset in the world.